Welcome to Robotics and Automation News webinars, where you can be part of a global event without leaving your home or office. Attend our live webinars and communicate directly with influential professionals in your industry.
Hello and welcome to roboticsandautomationnews.com. In this interview, I speak to Mark Thomas, Vice President of Marketing and Alliances at a company called Ridecell, which is quite well known in its field. Its main service is a fleet management platform where you can manage lots of different types of vehicles. And it's a very fast growing business and a very interesting business, which I knew not much about. And Mark explained, which I appreciate. So here's the interview.
Hi, my name is Mark Thomas. I head up our alliances and marketing team here in San Francisco at a company called Ridecell. Ridecell makes a platform for automation and mobility and is powering some of the world's most digitalized fleets.
Okay, let's elaborate a bit further on Ridecell. I'll go to the website in a minute. But I thought I'd dwell on you first. Give us a brief overview of Ridecell, or a little bit more about it, and then I'll ask you a bit more about the company.
Absolutely. Yeah, Ridecell was founded, the name Ridecell means get a ride with your cell phone. We've been working on the premise that shared mobility is the future for us all. So we are very well known for our platform for car sharing, station-based subscriptions, solutions for leasing companies. And what we've realized is that these car share fleets are some of the world's most digitalized fleets. They take advantage of completely keyless technology, and they have fully incorporated automation as a key part of running an efficient set of operations. So today, our company is powering fleets from Toyota, from the AAA out here in North America. We're powering some of the world's largest shared electric fleets. And really just recently announced a partnership where we are the technology and mobility platform provider for Arval.
And Mark, we were talking earlier, I found it very interesting how you were explaining about your recruitment process having been unusual, I suppose, because you know, the world has changed in the last couple of years because of the pandemic. But even without that sort of change, we are talking about a software development team or company. And software developers, as far as I know, generally they do tend to work a lot. They work round the clock almost, a lot of them, because it's a very complex endeavor and a lot of hours go into it. And as a result, they end up working from home a lot, which has kind of evolved into working from home all the time. So typically you get software companies and teams that have a large number of people working from home around the world in many cases. But explain about how you've found the recruitment process and what your team composition is like in that sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. In a post-COVID world, we think that the dynamic of the workforce has potentially changed forever. Certainly with my own team, I head up marketing and alliances. I'm the only person now that's based in headquarters, and I've hired some incredible experts in Chicago, Cleveland, Dallas, Seattle, and it's been great because we are all connected via Zoom. And what we're finding is that rather than all of us come together in the office, we are coming together where the customers are, at trade shows. For the sales teams, because we service physical assets like vehicles, It turns out that if you're a customer or an investor like Penske, yeah, they're grateful when we show up at their doorstep and have the ability to spend time with their vehicle fleets and truly help them visualize how these fleets can become digitalized in the future.
Hmm. And the idea of the activity of software development, I suppose, and creating a platform like this is fairly new. I mean, relatively new. Yeah, you know, Ridecell almost feels like an established company because I work in this sector and I've heard its name for several years now. But it's a very new endeavor, this idea of potentially autonomous vehicles and certainly connected vehicles, fleet operations and management. What are the kind of new things that you've had to do that no other company has ever done? It's not a question of innovation, it's almost a question of invention now with or has been over the last few years for companies like yourself who are breaking new ground in a metaphorical sense. So yeah, tell us about the journey of how these things are developed in this sector for your company.
Absolutely. We are inventing the category called fleet automation. And if you think about the journey with connected fleets, connected vehicles, what do? They generate and create raw data. Fleet management systems create insights. And fleet automation, the next level of software for fleets, creates automations that automatically act on those insights. And if you just have one telematics device and one fleet management system, your fleet managers can probably look at the prioritized alerts that are coming off these systems and get a sense of, hey, I think I can do this. But when you're a company with 50,000 vehicles and you're trying to understand how to do a digital transformation of something that's a physical asset, how do you change your business processes? How do you digitize things? How do you do automation in a way that doesn't necessarily take jobs away from fleet managers and people, but makes the system just much more efficient? And so what our background is in running and providing the software layer for car sharing fleets. And we found that there are some really unique technologies in these fleets that haven't yet proliferated to the general population of vehicle fleets. Take, for instance, that car sharing vehicle that's sitting on the street that somebody walks up to and pulls out their phone and hits the unlock button, or maybe pulls out an NFC card and taps the windshield. There is no physical key for that vehicle that's available to anyone. So while we aren't digitizing the vehicle, by moving the key to the cloud, it has some incredible effects that really change the ability to create automations that are truly powerful and transform the way business is done with fleets. When you combine an automation platform that takes your fleet management insights and allows you to generate automated workflows based on those, and that those workflows may or may not involve changing a key. Simple example, hey, we detect that there's a low tire pressure event. It's because the fleet management system gets information from the CAN bus. If the fleet management system knows that it's low tire, then it just, we ingest that and say, okay, what's the low tire rule? Well, is it a flat tire or just low tire? And then the automation intelligence says if it's low tire pressure, dispatch somebody there to fill the tire up and the vehicle can remain in service. If it's a flat tire, then it's either take the car or the van out of service, have somebody issue keys to the backup van, so the driver never has to worry that, hey, my van's out of commission, or where do I get the keys for the backup van? It's all able to be coordinated in a digital and automated manner.
Okay, Mark, if you don't mind, I will express sort of show my ignorance or out of dateness here. Basically, I'm old-fashioned, so when I hire a car, I go to a traditional hire company, car hire company. When I get a taxi, I'm still kind of unsure about these sort of apps that you use, and car sharing completely freaks me out. I've inadvertently shared a couple of cars or cabs to go to events and things like that. It just feels weird for me, but that's me. It's a new world, and maybe you can elaborate on that. Give us a
Nomenclature. Let's. There's oftentimes confusion about the whole mobility language, and since that's our roots, so ride sharing or ride hailing are services like Uber and Lyft, Ola, Didi. These are the ones where today there's you hire a vehicle, there's a driver. In some of those instances, those are pooled, meaning you share the vehicle with another person and you're both heading in a similar direction and the algorithm pairs you up. The pools have essentially been shut down because of COVID. And in fact, for ride sharing, most of even the front seats now in North America aren't available to sit in. What we're talking about in a digitized fleet is more like a zip car or a Kinto. These are cars that are parked either at a station and you can reserve them ahead of time, or they're cars that are just parked along the street, oftentimes like those scooters that you see, little kick scooters that you walk up to one, you unlock it, you get in, you drive to where you're going, and as long as it's still within the boundaries of where you can leave the car, the service zone, you get in, you drive it, you leave it, and you only pay for what you use. So that's a car sharing model, and we call the model where you get in and leave it somewhere else free floating, and the model where you reserve it ahead of time at a station and you bring it back to that station. That's called station based. People with station based tend to keep the cars a little longer, and it has one of the nicest benefits of being able to reserve ahead of time. In these instances, for both of them, there is no physical key. And so the expertise that we developed to help, in partnership with companies like Denso and Continental and Geotab, is that we partner with telematics companies that create keyless solutions, and we build the system on top of it that allows people to essentially never have to worry about being locked out. There's Bluetooth connections, there's 5G connections or 4G connections, there's NFC. So the nice thing is, when you never have to have a key or go into a rental company and wait at a counter to get somebody to hand you the key, it makes the transactions much more seamless and smooth. And the aha moment for our company is that getting rid of the key in vehicles like Amazon delivery vehicles or the DHL truck all actually have additional benefits. Even when you're thinking, hey, I have one driver for this van, he has a key, why would I want to go to the extra expense to get this keyless technology in place? And so I can really talk about what the automation revolution does for, not just rental fleets, but for delivery fleets and, service vehicles and even, leased cars.
Just before we get on to that, you can, I just wanted to clarify in my mind. So free floating one, you pick it up at point A and you can leave it at point B, and those points A and B are basically designated parking spaces that the car company has agreed or rented or whatever, leased or whatever. The station-based one, where do they put it back? Where do they return the car?
So free floating means that you typically have an agreement with the city that says these cars are a public good. Typically, with a free floating car sharing system, it means that every vehicle that's in the fleet over time will take away 10 vehicles from the city, because people come to rely upon these and realize I don't need to pay insurance and own a car if I can always find one of them in my neighborhood. So the cities have an incentive to allow these free floating. So you get a permit that says these cars can be parked in metered spots. They can be parked in residential areas. They can be parked anywhere within a certain boundary. And the app lets you know, hey, Mark, you're leaving the boundary. If you want to park it, make sure that you bring it back inside. So the free floating is generally an agreement with the city that says you can park the cars essentially anywhere, except for, of course, a handicap spot or a loading zone. In station-based, it's a little harder to get going because it means you have to essentially license or pay for spots in a parking garage or in a petrol station or in a department store that may have extra parking, or a shopping mall. So you're sourcing dedicated parking spots. You put up a sign that says parking for gig cars only here, or just like in the past, we've seen the zip car stations. So the convenience of having a station is that you can reserve them ahead of time because you know where the car is going to be. The convenience of free floating is that you can get in and use it for a one-way trip.
Absolutely fascinating. Thank you for that. I didn't really know about the nuts and bolts of it, but I just want to explore this area a little bit more. I mean, we are talking about conventional cars in most senses. They're, you drive them. They're not autonomous, driverless or anything. Keyless, yes, but this bit I've managed to understand. Just a quick question about the commercialization of this model, if you like, new business model. How many cities have sort of introduced this system? I mean, in London, we had scooters and things like that, but I don't remember cars. I mean, I've been away for a couple of years, but I don't remember car system like that. In America, there must be at least one or two cities that you're dealing with or you know about.
I think in every major city in the world, there's several different shared mobility options. If you're a car owner, you may not find them particularly relevant, but Zipcar has been around for over 20 years. The Car2Go model or the Free Now, Share Now companies, that merger between Daimler and BMW's car sharing services are prevalent throughout Europe. So it's a rather widely adopted phenomenon amongst a generation of people who believe that vehicle ownership isn't necessarily a rite of passage, and that being able to have a vehicle at their access when they want it, and have the freedom to not have to worry about car payments, parking tickets, registrations, and things like that, are quite different.
Well, that is an enlightened approach to motoring and driving. Personally, I'm from the older generation. As I said to you before, I can't get used to it. I'm sure it's very easy once I kind of get over this mental block, but I didn't know that this is so widespread. I'm still thinking that the car companies, the big automakers. I mean, a few years ago, I was reading about how they're looking ahead to adapting to this shared mobility sort of generation, as it were. And I didn't know it was already here. So I can imagine it growing a lot more. I may not be part of it, however. I mean, whenever I want to buy a car. I do buy a car and sell it and things like that, old
Yeah.
fashioned. But it's very expensive to buy a car and run it, the insurance and tax and all sorts of things. So I totally see the sense of this new model, and I'd imagine it's been growing a lot. I mean, what's the market size of it? You mentioned earlier about, hypothetically, if you have a company with 50,000 cars, I mean, that's a lot of vehicles. I mean, what kind of companies are you dealing with, and what size are we looking at? How many cars and what's the size of the fleets?
So I would say, I brought up shared mobility because the shared mobility fleets are very difficult to truly create and expand as thriving, profitable businesses without having every digital tool in your wallet available. So we had created automations that detect, hey, this vehicle's parked somewhere. We recommend that you automatically lower the price on it to get someone to walk extra to take that one, because street cleaning is coming and you'll get an $80 ticket. Hey, this one looks like it's in an area where the model says it's not going to be rented because it's not a very popular. We looked at our model, and people that open the app and look for cars don't live near there. So let's just pay someone to move it. This automation engine that we built, turns out, is incredibly valuable for other kinds of fleets. And so being able to take the digital revolution that we helped these initial car sharing fleets, and take the technology and apply it to other fleet types. And so you think about the delivery truck having the ability, the delivery person runs in the back, grabs their handful of packages, and if they shut the door, it's a good day. Bump it with their hip. Do they lock the car? No. Sometimes they leave the keys in the car, they leave it running, and theft of packages, theft of vehicles is a problem. If you have the ability to control the door locks, you can sense when that driver has left the vehicle, and not just automatically lock the door. Even if they left the keys in the ignition, you can automatically turn off the immobilizer so that nobody, if they break the window, get in, try and drive off, it's all protected. So this is one of the key things that you can start to look at and go, hey, this has nothing to do with handing the driver the key in the morning. This has to do with intelligent digital control of who can start the vehicle, who can enter the vehicle. And being able to then start to automatically pass digital credentials means that, hey, when a maintenance person comes, they don't have to meet somebody to get the keys to get into the vehicle. They can just be digitally issued the keys. So we're seeing, FedEx, UPS, DHL all have, tens and hundreds of thousands of vehicles in their fleets. If they can start to automate the way those vehicles are maintained, their vehicles are shared, and the vehicles are used for locking and unlocking, you can really help your compliance in an industry where if you're riding around with an out-of-spec vehicle, the fleet manager can revoke the digital keys for that car rather than rely upon the driver to get in, turn the key, oh, the check engine light's on. Well, guess what? It's already loaded with my stuff. No one's going to care. I'm going to drive and do my run anyhow. This is a way to make vehicles safer for everybody on the road, as well as ensure that they're being driven while properly maintained. So it's a much bigger market than just focusing on taking these technologies and allowing people to do car sharing.
Okay. Well, if you don't mind, I'll just go to my browser and share some pages that I thought were worth looking at while we talk. So this is our website. We've been covering Ridecell stories for quite some time, and I can see that there's Partnerships with Kanglim, which looks like an industrial or construction vehicle company. Toyota, you mentioned, they're an investor. First ever platform to convert vehicle data into automated operations. Ridecell raises $45 million. And, going back a bit further, you've acquired one or two companies. This is the Ridecell website. What's the latest now? What's the initiative or the marketing campaign or business objective at the moment? What's your priority?
Yeah, our priority, I think the announcement with Arval on helping companies that are going through digital transformations, that wanting to create automated workflows, set up automations as they put in multiple different fleet management systems. So imagine they decide to put in a cabin monitoring system in the car. Well, now the fleet manager has one system that's giving alerts. Hey, this is a distracted driver. Hey, this driver's checking their cell phone. Oh, this driver just went through a stop sign. We think this driver might be driving under the influence. You're getting one stream of insights from one connected device, and then you have another connected device that's connected to the CAN bus, having all of these different devices and then associated fleet management systems providing recommendations. Maybe you have a third system by UiPath that's giving predictive maintenance recommendations. Now you've got 3 or 4 or 5 different systems. Oh, and by the way, you have a accounts receivable system that says, hey, somebody who's renting this car hasn't paid in 2 weeks. Being able to set automated business triggers to multiple different kinds of events that are taking place brings us what IoT was supposed to do for fleets, which was, remember when IoT was M2M, machine to machine, and today it's about a machine connectivity that goes to a fleet management system that then goes into a fleet manager's inbox. It's not M2M, it's M2P, machine to person. If you have automation, you can actually make the entire thing back to machine, where it's round trip. The insights from the vehicle change the state of the vehicle. So you can see here on the screen, the connected vehicles create data that's interpreted by the fleet management systems. The fleet management systems then have recommendations and alerts that today are delivered by text message, notifications, email, consoles. With our APIs, we are able to integrate to the fleet management systems and then let the fleet managers set up automated workflows so that the low tire pressure insight, the EDVIR, the electronic driver vehicle inspection report that says there's a cracked windshield, once that alert, they check the box saying the windshield's an issue. There's no need for a fleet manager to call and schedule an appointment with the service vendor, where you can see down there. The system itself says, hey, the driver reported a broken windshield. Probably the sub one is it smaller than a quarter, or is it bigger than an inch? Because if it's smaller than a quarter, you send one guy who can inject it. If it's larger, you have to send a person that replaces it. And in those instances, being able to send the model, the VIN, and everything to the service vendor, you can very efficiently schedule time for the vehicle to be serviced. You can take the vehicle out of service and issue the driver a backup vehicle while that repair is taking place. So this kind of shows you here insight management, digital vehicle control, and workflow automation. The insight management is when you're getting insights from a ton of different systems, having this ability to then create digital workflows based upon those insights. The digital vehicle control is kind of our shortcut name for keyless entry and immobilizer control. So that because if you have something like keyless that says, I have issued, the only person allowed to drive this car is John, who's the driver, and John hasn't entered the car, but then the system detects that the vehicle's moving. Well, how is it moving if there's no authorized driver? You can immediately send out an alert that somebody's towing the vehicle or the vehicle's being stolen. And if you can do a check that says the engine's running, then we have the ability to automatically cut the engine off once they've parked it again so that they can't restart it and keep going. Being able to take insights from the vehicle and determine that it's being stolen, that it's moving or being towed, and take and send the authorities. Some of our customers that have had vehicles stolen with this style technology in it have found that their recovery times go from typically 3 to 4 weeks down to 3 to 4 hours. Once they park the car and they can't restart it, they abandon it. And then all you do is send a driver down with a buddy in his car. The buddy gets out, gets in, and drives it back to the lot. That's a month's worth of value of that vehicle that was saved. And if the vehicle was never recovered, then you've just saved yourself the time of trying to acquire a new one, especially during this time when acquiring vehicles is getting much harder due to the supply chain issues.
Mm. Yeah, it's all very interesting. How does I was just wondering, how does a customer kind of subscribe to your services? Do they contact you first, or is there a page where they can sign up? I mean, what normally happens in a typical sort of business transaction or agreement, or how do you go about doing something like this?
Absolutely. So there's a couple different ways. If you are running, if you're a government, city, state, local, and you have a fleet of vehicles that are shared, like in your motor pool, then we are a preferred partner of Geotab. And so if you're on the CalDGS or Sourcewell, you just buy us from the pick list of items that are pre-authorized to buy as a city. So we're working with a number of different cities around the nation. If you're interested in really understanding digital transformations, then there's a contact us web form where, by all means, please send me an email at markt@ridecell.com, and I'd be happy to talk to you more about the system and how this can be used for digital transformations.
Mm. All right. Well, so far we've talked about automations that, if you don't mind me saying, a software based, basically. I don't know if any hardware is involved. I mean, you mentioned telemetry. I don't know if you sort of have developed your own telemetry device, or whether you're talking about the telemetry device in the car that's already there. Maybe the manufacturer has put it in. But the big automation, the big step change, would be if cars were autonomous themselves. I mean, if they were sort of if they were able to go back to the station in the station-based models, go back to their parking spots. And there are, stories around that. I've talked about this kind of subject. What's your perspective or experience or knowledge of this? How far advanced is how close are we to seeing that kind of system where a car kind of comes to pick you up, an autonomous driverless car comes to pick you up at your location, and then when you finished, it drives itself back to whatever location it's supposed to go back to?
Yes, so in San Francisco today, it's already a reality. There are several companies, Waymo and Cruise, that are offering autonomous rides to individuals. I'd say we're still in the infancy of the transformation from ride sharing with a driver in it to ride sharing that's autonomous, or the robo taxi comment. Certainly one of the reasons that we believe that the category called fleet automation is going to balloon is, unlike today's model where, you know, the majority of the vehicles are associated with a household, and it's one of the household chores to keep that vehicle with air in the tires and well maintained. If we move into a world where robo-taxis become the primary mechanism to get around, because the driver is not in the car, it cuts out 75% of the cost. So ideally, these robo-taxi systems would be, you know, much closer to half the cost of private vehicle ownership. And just like we saw with Spotify, once it becomes dramatically cheaper to use a stream service or pay for something as a service as opposed to owning something, people are very willing to chuck their wall of CDs in order to just press a button on their phone and listen to the music. And if you can press a button on your phone and get to where you're going without having to worry about parking, without having to worry about getting home if you've had a few drinks, that it's not just a cheaper way to get around, it'll be a better way to get around. Being able to, that time that you spend driving can now be used watching Netflix or taking a video conference call and getting work done. So the move to autonomous shared fleets is going to require systems that are constantly checking the battery level, so that when somebody requests a ride from San Francisco to San Jose, the system provider won't be sending a vehicle that doesn't have enough charge to get you the 60 miles that you requested the ride. They'll instead route a different vehicle, and maybe that vehicle's will be then sent to the charging station so that they'll be ready for the next long ride. There's tons of interconnectivity to help manage, especially electric vehicles, keeping them maintained, keeping them charged, keeping them clean, and keeping them safe.
Okay, well, I've just got a couple of quick questions to finish up. One quick question is, I don't know why, but Arrow, a company called Arrow, stuck in my mind. It's something that Ridecell acquired a few years ago. I think it's because Arrow was, it showcased a autonomous vehicle as part of its solution, as it were, just showcasing its technology. The other one is about big car makers and how you think they should or are approaching this new world of shared things. I understand it a bit better now as a result of talking to you. I mean, I've read stories about the shared economy. I didn't really understand what it is, but I understand a bit more about it now, especially when you put it like that, when you're saying that if it becomes cheaper than actually owning, then it makes sense to use shared services, and whether it's music or car sharing. But yeah, let's talk about this Arrow company, which I believe Ridecell acquired a few years ago, about 2017. Yeah, and what's happened to that? What's the latest?
5 years ago, we all thought that autonomous driving would be here last year. You know, Ford's announcement that their vehicles will be all autonomous by 2021. We had a very different vision of the speed at which autonomous would be adopted. When we acquired Oro, we really were hoping to create a new category of autonomous that, instead of being autonomous ride sharing, which is where people get in the car and they get driven around, we were developing something called autonomous car sharing. One of the disadvantages of autonomous driving is, you know, it can't make left turns. And so if you're in a car that has to make 3 right turns instead of 1 unprotected left, you're not happy as a customer. But what we were planning on using Aro for was taking car sharing fleets and repositioning them at night where they could creep along at low speed, take inefficient but safe routes, and get to the most desirable place so that the next day they'd be parked in front of a train station, for instance, when the commuters got off and wanted a car. What we've found since we've really enhanced and expanded our product portfolio to focus on automation is that one of the great gifts that the RO team built was this automation engine that's able to scan hundreds of thousands of miles worth of camera and LiDAR data and automate the information and the tags so that it can interpret it for any company that's doing autonomous driving. So in this case, our RO product that we branded Nemo is able to look at these hundreds of thousands of miles and mark it up very precisely. So you were able to then detect, hey, that was a jaywalker. Hey, the weather, it's raining, it's night. That's a stop sign that's partially visible. This is a vehicle that was going too slow or in traffic. And so then the people who were creating the models who want to test some of these edge cases, I want to see an edge case when a bicyclist unexpectedly swerves into the lane of traffic. You're able to know those because RO's Nemo has marked it up. And then you can run it through the simulator, just those 5-minute segments, instead of having to waste hours and hours of compute time for the very few instances when that may happen. So it's allowing the pace of innovation to grow much more quickly because essentially companies are able to train their models more quickly using this incredible marked up data that Nemo has provided them.
And it's now been rebranded Nemo, and you gave me the link earlier. Okay, just to finish up, the big question, if you don't mind being a bit speculative, you have a lot of knowledge in this field, and this is why I enjoy talking to people like you, because in your line of work you kind of learn things and you're able to provide insights that I think are useful to broad different kinds of people. And the car companies, there was stories about car companies saying that in the future people won't buy cars. I don't know how true that is. I haven't looked at the data lately, and the pandemic obviously has skewed everything out of, put everything out of balance or whatever. So it's difficult to sort of analyze the last couple of years of data and project forward as a result or based on it. But car sales long term, do you think they're going to go down as a result of the shared economy? How are the car companies going to approach their technology even? I mean, I've hired 1 or 2 cars where I didn't have to put the key in the door. So I kind of am familiar with that. But, as I say, I'm old fashioned, so it was odd. It felt really odd. It still feels really odd. But what kind of changes do you see happening to the automotive industry?
Oh, that's it. It's an exciting future, I have to admit. The companies, automotive OEMs, are focusing on the initiative that's known in the industry as CASE. Connectivity, automation, shared, and electric. So they are assiduously putting initiatives into every one of those. The connectivity part's almost becoming standard now with every new vehicle. I would say that that's certainly to do any kind of mobility service, they're all connected. Autonomous is where it's intensive. It's what they're very good at, which is a lot of intensity. So they have of research, there's hardware, there's software. For mobility as a customer-facing service, what we found is that automotive OEMs have created new brands and new divisions that allow them to fundamentally set up an organization whose DNA is all about servicing a customer, so providing a customer experience. With the automotive OEMs, certainly in North America, their customers are dealerships, not necessarily end users. So, for example, Toyota's mobility brand is called Kinto, and that's the umbrella brand with lots of different sub brands. Kinto Share, and these are car sharing, their subscriptions, their rentals, and having the ability to have a separate entity almost entirely that's free to develop the partnerships and the customer experience. This is how most of the automotive OEMs are approaching building the next generation of brand that will allow them to move from selling vehicles to dealerships to providing rides as a service to end customers.
Okay, Mark, thank you very much for your time and your insights today.
Yes, thank you so much as well. A really interesting discussion.
Is there something that I maybe missed, I should have asked about, that you want to say?
I think the theme, especially your focus on automation, I'd say that the watch this space and the takeaway is, we never thought that companies could automate white collar jobs, and yet this whole category of software called RPA, remote process automation, has spawned a number of multi-billion-dollar valued companies that have come in not to displace white collar workers, but to take away the mundane, boring part of their jobs by automating it and letting them focus on the part that's richer, more interesting, and more complex. This concept, fleet automation, has yet to truly be discovered. And so now that when we're talking to chief strategy officers or chief information officers who are thinking about, how do I do a digital transformation and digital business transformations of my business to make my product better, to make my process more efficient, make my customers happier, adding in this new layer of fleet automation is probably one of the big aha insights that I think that you are able to share with your readers, which is automation now has high relevance to fleets. And certainly, if you want to find out more about it, talk to Ridecell or send Mark an email here at markt@ridecell.com.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
All right. Thank you too, Abdul. Bye-bye.
Send us an email at sales@roboticsandautomationnews.com to register for one of our many upcoming webinars. And if you'd like us to host your webinar, we have a range of options, including long-term lead generation packages and marketing campaigns. We look forward to hearing from you soon.